Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be talking about an article from the Jerusalem Post on how Israelis blame their own government for Hamas massacre, say Netanyahu must resign. An overwhelming majority of 86% of respondents, including 79% of coalition supporters, said the surprise attack from Gaza is a failure of the country's leadership. So I think what they were hoping for was another 9/11 rallying around the flag type of event. And I think they knew about the movement of Hamas's troops. We actually have evidence that both Egypt and the United States has provided them information that Hamas was planning on attacking, and they just completely ignored it. Like, they literally moved troops away. They shut down some of their defenses. Like, they really did. I mean, it's almost assured that they intentionally ignored it. And I think what they were expecting was a slight attack to briefly penetrate into Israel, and then they would respond immediately and it would just be pushed back. But it would remind people that there is an external threat that they could rally around. What ended up happening was Hamas, having a couple thousand troops, moved very far, penetrated very, very, very far into Israel, far farther than I think Hamas expected or the Israeli government expected when they allowed this to occur. And so this conflict, which could have been used to rally the troops, which I think is what Netanyahu is doing, ended up causing a lot of dissent to him. So remember that some people can have plans that completely backfire. And I think that's exactly what happened here. So let's read on. 4 out of 5 Jewish Israelis believe the government and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are to blame for the mass infiltration of Hamas terrorists into Israel and the massacre that followed. A new Dialogue Center poll released on Thursday found an overwhelming majority, 86% of respondents, including 79% of coalition supporters, so that means Netanyahu's own coalition, said the surprise attack from Gaza is a failure of the country's leadership, while a staggering 92% said the war is causing anxiety. Furthermore, almost all of the respondents, 94%, believe the government must bear some responsibility for the lack of security preparedness that led to the assault, with over 75% saying the government holds most of the responsibility. Netanyahu must resign after war's conclusion, Israelis say. The survey, which polled 620 Israeli Jews from across the country, also found that a majority of respondents believe Netanyahu should resign following the conclusion of Operation Swords of Iron. Okay? I believe that that must be the name of the current operation against Gaza. A slim majority of 56% said Netanyahu must resign at the end of the war, with 28% of coalition voters agreeing with this view. And 52% of respondents also expect Defense Minister Yov Galan to resign. Okay, so this is really interesting. I believe Yoav was the person who said he was cutting off water, electricity, food, internet access to all Gaza residents. So that's obviously war crimes. He should be brought up in international courts for war crimes. Obviously, that's not going to happen just considering how Israeli-controlled international mechanisms are right now. But it should be. And it's anyone's guess, though, if Netanyahu is actually going to survive this situation with his, survive in terms of politically with his job. Because it looks like this backfired on him, but it could be that once they gain steam and once they realize that a lot of the world is actually against what they're doing, aside from the Western Empire, as always, it could be the fact that maybe he does lose his job, or it could be that people feel like they're attacked, they have a lot of external threats, and maybe they rally behind Netanyahu. So Netanyahu, you can't sleep on this guy. He really knows how to turn bad situations into good situations to benefit him. So there's still a possibility that by the end of this conflict that he actually turns things around and gets people back on his side. Okay. In addition, most respondents said they do not trust the government to lead the war on Gaza, though the poll was conducted before Former Defense Minister Benny Gantz joined an emergency unity government on Wednesday evening. Okay, so this is kind of what's going on in the what I'm calling the Judeo-Islamic War of 2023. And I've talked about this, but this is the opening salvos for what I believe to be World War III, and you're seeing heinous acts being conducted by Israel. And then you're seeing a lot of propaganda against Hamas. Again, I'm not the biggest Hamas supporter because I do think that the Syrian government is legitimate and Hamas fought against the Syrian government. But Hamas in this conflict has been extremely tame. It looks like whenever what was it, the crowd of people at some festival or something like that. They were actually shot not because Hamas was trying to kill civilians, but because there were people with guns within the crowd. And so that's exactly why that occurred. Then you have things like the beheaded children story, 40 beheaded children. That was essentially a complete fabrication. It just was people saying rumors back and forth, and journalists, being the awful human beings that they are, repeated those rumors, even though there was absolutely no evidence supporting it. And then I saw people like on counterpoints, breaking points, like alternative cast, talking about, well, whether it's 40 children or fewer than 40 children that were beheaded, it was still a heinous crime by Hamas. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What if it was 0 children? What if this story was completely made up? And that seems to be the case, but people are just not believing that. They think that, well, if Israelis say that some people were beheaded, some children were beheaded, then it must have been the case, even if it was fewer than they said. But all available evidence that I can see that has been made available to me really does show that it was 0. There were 0 beheaded children. It looks like these stories are complete propaganda. I believe there's one media outlet that said Hamas directly attacked an elementary school while the kids were there. But it was a Saturday at dawn. Like, what kids were at school on Saturday at dawn? So, like, there was just some really weird stories that were very clearly propaganda. And people say, yes, Israel is conducting a lot of heinous acts right now. They're doing a lot of awful things, but Hamas is doing a lot of awful things too. But like, no one has actually been able to point to, during this operation, what did Hamas do that was actually immoral? Like, what they didn't directly target civilians. There were civilians in the crossfire in crowds because there were people with weaponry. They've shown videos of the children being well taken care of that were involved in the conflict. They just couldn't leave the children there by themselves, things like that. If you know anything about Israel, you know that essentially every adult is a military combatant in Israel because of the fact that they are all a part of the military at a certain point in time. So, like, there was, as far as I could tell, there's not overly much that Hamas directly did to be terrorist in this situation. Again, Hamas in the past has had a lot of acts that I would have considered terrorism, especially related to Syria, the Syrian situation. But in this specific conflict, as far as I can tell, every single act of potential terrorism that they were supposedly conducting has been found to be a complete fabrication. So just curious about what's going on with this, why people think that Hamas is doing things, or why there's any type of moral equivalence here between the two, because I'm not seeing any sort of moral equivalence. It seems like Israel is definitively in the wrong here. Whenever Hamas is forced to fight amongst civilians, they try to minimize civilian casualties, things like that. Whereas Israel, they literally have turned off the water and food supply for over 2 million people. I mean, it's literally genocide at this point. Literally, you don't get much worse than that. Already, tens of thousands of people have probably died in Gaza. It's really hard to get information from there right now because the internet's cut out. And you can expect tens of thousands, if not even potentially hundreds of thousands, to die in upcoming days if they don't have access to food and water. That's just how, I don't know if you know this, but people actually do need sustenance. Okay? So that is the situation. This channel strongly condemns Israel and its heinous acts, its war crimes. And so if you also condemn Israel and the things that it's doing in the world, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content. We are giving you the latest, hottest topics in geopolitics, as well as me just kind of going over other things that I think you should know about. And leave us a comment in the comment box. I love reading what you have to say. I get direct notifications to my phone, so I read it pretty much immediately. I sometimes try to respond if it's something that needs a response, things like that. And thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.